The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Breaking news, as in case you missed it, we broke down recruiting as Tennessee picks up pretty significant prospect with a fantastic backstory this morning. Also on the program a little bit later, what tier of a quarterback is Joe Milton? And Tennessee ranks pretty high in post-spring rankings per one national report. And I'm going to weigh in slightly off topic on the Ja Morant thing because this thing's gotten a little crazy. And the reason I think it's relevant to what we do is you're going to have young men that have more money in their pockets than ever before. And buying a gun is a status symbol for a younger generation. But also, are we being a little bit unfair in how we are looking at Ja Morant? Again, it's not going to be a Grizzlies talk per se, but it is going to be a talk about where we are in our society. So I'm going to go slightly off topic, off schedule a little bit later in the program. But first, my man, Caleb Calhoun. It is his birthday. So how many happy birthday wishes can we get for Caleb Calhoun, who gets a big
Today's
oh, he doesn't get a today's tough question. He gets a Hank Kingsley.
Hey now.
Happy birthday, my man.
Why, thank you, Dave.
Look at you. I mean,
I look heavenly, don't I?
You do look heavenly. You look like Patrick Swayze from Ghost, but that's fine. So
guys, apologies in advance. I got a new studio work in the works for next Monday. Not there yet, so just enjoy my godlike status for now.
Yes, angelic. It's a process. It makes me look incredibly tan being next to you right now. So for those that are so for those that are just listening and not watching, you need to check out YouTube. Please subscribe. As a matter of fact, Jacob Warren will be the first to tell you that I need this.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
All right, so here we go. Emmanuel Okoye out of London, England, signs with the Vols. So this is not just a commitment. I may have misspoken earlier, but this is a guy who's going to be on Tennessee's campus in 2023, wants to be a part of summer workout. So he theoretically could get there could get to Knoxville in the next couple of days. But you would think that the second session of summer school would be a real possibility. And if not, he'll be with Tennessee in the fall. Now, this is a guy who has a 45.5-inch vertical. This is a guy who is a project guy. Okay, so he's not going to show up on campus and have 10 sacks this year, Caleb, but this is a guy who Southern California wanted really bad, and a lot of people were after him. And I think it's pretty exciting for Tennessee to be able to pull a guy like this. The upside is tremendous. In the old days, Caleb, I might argue that you take up a scholarship in hopes of an impact player, but nowadays it's a business. And at some point, if Okoye can't play, they're just going to say you're better off elsewhere. So there's really no risk involved here with a guy that has tremendous upside. What did you think of the get by the Vols?
Yeah, I thought it was a great pickup for Tennessee. I even break from you a little bit in terms of whether or not he makes an impact this year. If he doesn't, it's because of how loaded they are at edge rusher. But let's not forget, if you look at Okoye and you look at his highlights, what you very clearly get is he's raw, but he's got incredible instincts and he's very athletic. Here's the thing about edge rusher. Not a lot of learning at that position. Not a lot of roles you have to play. On top of that, in Tennessee's system, edge rushers don't have to develop too much. They can be pretty raw. Remember, Byron Young was extremely raw when he got signed 2 years ago, and he immediately broke out and was an impact player. I think Rodney Garner and Mike Eckler have a pretty solid system, whether or not you think Okoye would play outside linebacker or defensive end. And what could happen is, I mean, again, athleticism and potential outweighs being seasoned at the position when it comes to edge rusher. It's almost like running back. You can plug a guy in Tennessee's system and just have them ready to go.
Agreed. Even if he never, ever is an impact player, he's already had an impact. It is one of the top stories, and it's a slow time as far as sports news, but it's one of the top stories on ESPN right now. Chris Lowe just wrote about it, and because you have a better story, because he's from Nigeria, he was part of the NFL Academy program in England. So he's going to play college football at Tennessee. 6'5", 230 pounds. USC and Texas Tech were the other schools. He also had offers from other Power 5 schools, including Georgia. So the plan is to enroll this summer. And as far as an impact on what he can have, I've seen firsthand a guy come in, Konstantin Ritzmann, came in from Germany and was a fish out of water in the beginning. Not to say that'll be Okoye, but Ritzmann turned into a captain for the Vols. So the transition can be made. And again, Okoye's upside, no offense to Konstantin Ritzmann, but I think he was a very solid player. Okoye's upside is more significant. 45.5-inch vertical is what we've been told. I would like to see that in person, but that is through the NFL Academy. 11-foot 3-inch broad jump, both of which would be NFL combine records for defensive ends, and a 72-inch wingspan. So it's almost as if Caleb, who looks very angelic on this day, it's almost as if Okoye was created in heaven to be a defensive end edge rusher in football. So pretty significant.
Absolutely. A fun fact about Konstantin Ritzmann, he scored 10 points in the 2001 season in 3 different ways. He recovered a fumble for a touchdown against Kentucky. He got a safety against Syracuse. And this is the funniest one, he was in on an extra point against Memphis that was blocked. And then the holder, I think was at the time, I forget his name, improvised and picked up the block extra point and threw it into the end zone to Konstantin Ritzmann for a 2-point conversion. So
I covered those games, and I don't remember that. That's Caleb Calhoun, ladies and gentlemen. That's
one of the wildest plays. Imagine a blocked extra point turning into a 2-point conversion. Like, that is a wild play. But yeah, no, that did happen with Konstantin Ritzmann. But yeah, I think this guy, okay, has much greater upside. Right now, Tyler Barron and Roman Harrison seem like they're the seasoned vets. But with Okoye in, Dave, I mean, next year, James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, Emmanuel Okoye. I mean, we're talking. You've already talked about Joshua Josephs. You think if you just like you and Fred White both say if you just like put a bubble suit around him and you say he's going to be just a superstar the minute you unleash him, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So imagine him on one side and then Okoye with this raw potential on the other.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, he grew up playing soccer, so you'd think he'd have great feet. He was a basketball guy. This is according to Chris Lowe. And then he was discovered last year by, if you remember, O.C. Umenyiora, the defensive end for the New York Giants, with that great front they had. And it's part of the Uprise program that scouts out these guys. So here's a guy that probably was not a great fit in basketball, because he's 6'5", and there are a lot of 6'5" dudes. He's probably too big to play soccer. This is his chance, and to make a living playing sports, and he should grab a hold of it and take advantage, because there are not a lot of dudes walking around with that type of athletic ability.
Yeah, I agree. That's the big thing, is he's got just rare athleticism, and the fact that he played basketball. We've seen this. Defensive end is a position or edge rush is a position where typically your skills in basketball translate, because a lot of edge rushers are playing in the post in basketball, and a lot of it's about their big focus is rebounding and leverage. This from covering Tennessee basketball in 2001. Julius Peppers was a master at leverage, and Tennessee had no idea how to deal with him when he came into the game. And So it's like how playing center field translates to playing safety really well.
There you go. I like that. Good stuff. All right. So hit the like and subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, have your notifications on. A couple things on the message board is whitewashed Caleb because he's having a lighting issue, which is worth the visit to YouTube. If you're on one of our audio platforms, the new Swayze from Ghost, the Omen, he's getting some of that, but it's his birthday, guys. So wish Caleb happy birthday because he certainly keeps me straight and no question about it. So happy birthday. And I'm just giving you a hard time, Caleb. You know that. I think you look very angelic. Happy birthday. Are you, do you share your birthday, your age, or are you of the female persuasion that does not like to share that like my wife?
No, I share it. Yeah, I'm 35 years old. I don't
35 years old. He's so young. By the way, somebody mentioned that Konstantin Ritzman was the Germinator. And he absolutely hated that nickname. I remember asking him about that. And I said, what do you think about your new nickname, the Germinator? And he goes, I don't really like that, but that's fine. Whatever. Was his response.
I just would have loved for him to have played for Derek Dooley and just gotten the D-Day analogy of the Germans during World War II.
Nice. All right. So here we go. A lot to get to on the program. And let's start with current Vols that are out there. And I'll tell you what, I saw this on in the rundown for the show. We went over in our production meeting at 4 a.m. as we do each and every day. The Vols number 4 in the post spring SEC power rankings. So what do you think of number 4? I think that's pretty complimentary considering anybody's going to be number 2 from the get. Now, this is by on 3, but anybody's going to be number 2 in the SEC to Georgia. So what did you think of number 4 in the post-spring power ratings?
I think this is disrespectful.
Oh, here we go.
See, Dave and I are both very, very objective, but I feel like so far I've seen like even the harder one on Tennessee. But I think in this sentence, I'm going to sound like more the Tennessee cheerleader than Dave. They should be ahead of Alabama. That doesn't mean they're going to be better than Alabama in the fall. But these are power rankings, meaning where you are at this moment. Where is Alabama at the end of spring? Desperate for a quarterback. Desperate for someone who can hit the ground if they're trying to spike the ball. Okay? And Tennessee, whatever else you think, is not desperate for a quarterback. They have a starter, and if the starter doesn't work out, they got a backup that everybody has a pretty good bit of faith in. Alabama went in, desperately added Tyler Buckner from the transfer portal. I'm sorry. I know Dave and I disagree. That's probably why he's fine with Alabama ahead of Tennessee. You don't think it was as desperate of a move. But I'm pretty sure it was because they don't have a quarterback on the roster and they needed one. And because of that move, post-spring, Tennessee should be ahead of Alabama. I get LSU. Jaden Daniels is back, very high on it. I get Georgia. Georgia's Georgia at this point. It's a factory for NFL talent, beyond even what Alabama was doing at Nick Saban's height. But outside of those two, Tennessee should be a clear-cut number 3 post-spring.
Yeah, clear-cut number 3. So that is what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
So Tennessee, number 4 in the power rankings, post-spring power rankings by on 3, as Caleb just mentioned, behind Georgia, LSU, and Alabama. What the H brought to you by Craft Treats. Use the promo code OFFTHEHOOK. Promo code OFFTHEHOOK. Get 20% off at crafttreats.com. They have the chill pills, which will chill your pet out when it comes to anxiety or digestive issues or arthritis with the CBD derivative in there. The chill pills are fantastic. Go to crafttreats.com. Use the promo code OFFTHEHOOK, and you get 20% off your pet. I absolutely love it. crafttreats.com. So are we a little bit too bully? Because I got this from someone who listens to the show daily. Are we a little too bully on LSU this year? I think both you and I think that LSU and Brian Kelly is going to be tough to handle in the next 3, 4, 5 years. But are we a little bit too bully this year, or do I have an antiquated notion of what it takes to rebuild a program? Because nowadays you can do it in a couple years as opposed to 3 or 4 years. But I did get the feedback from somebody that we're a little too bully, a little too high on LSU. Why are we not high on LSU?
I think the only way you could be not high on LSU is if you looked at that SEC championship game and saw, okay, they weren't on the level of Georgia. What you miss is they got to the SEC championship game, beat Alabama in Brian Kelly's first year. I said from the start, if Tennessee made the smart move in 2008 and hired Brian Kelly, they'd have a couple of national championships already. And they should have hired Brian Kelly over Lane Kiffin. He was the best option. People are going to sit there and point out Brian Kelly never won a national title at Notre Dame. You know what? He got Notre Dame to the title game, and anybody that knows the state of Notre Dame football knows that that's a monumental task, because there are 39 other jobs where it's easier to win at than Notre Dame right now. I don't care about program prestige. So that was a huge deal on its own, and he did it a few times. He got it to the college football playoff. So I think this year, let's talk about, they bring their quarterback back. There's an argument. I would argue Tennessee, but if you don't say Tennessee, you would have to say LSU's got the best set of wideouts in the SEC, as On 3 noted. And their biggest issue last year was their secondary, which is when they gave up a lot of points. They completely revamped it in the transfer portal. So combine revamping your secondary, you're loaded at skill positions, a second year of experience in Brian Kelly's system, and then Brian Kelly just being an all-out really, 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 really good football coach when he's not dancing and doing hip-hop dances with recruits or putting on a fake Southern accent. And
it's not that you know what's weird? That was so goofy and when it happened, but it's almost become likable now and made him, he's kind of a stiff guy, made him almost, I don't know if likable is the right word, or approachable. But, you know, he kind of poked fun at himself a little bit. So at the time, it seemed stupid, the fake Southern accent and the hip hop thing. But now it kind of seems like he's less of a stiff, to be real honest with you. As far as the East and West, now there's not going to be really an East and a West, I don't think, for much longer. But just out of the teams that we're looking at now, if there were an East and West 2 years from now, which would be the best top to bottom? Because in the East right now, you've got Georgia, you've got a surging Tennessee program. You might have a surging you do have a surging South Carolina program. You've got Florida that's kind of floundering. Missouri, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, they kind of are what they are. I got a lot of respect for Kentucky, but it is what it is. But then I look at the West teams with LSU, Alabama. Nick Saban might have another 3 or 4 years in him. I like the Auburn hire with Hugh Freeze a lot. In fact, Lane Kiffin is going to be what he is, and that's a guy that's going to flirt with 9 wins pretty much every year at Ole Miss. Got questions about Mississippi State because of the late Mike Leach, and rest in peace. If I had to predict those group of teams that would be better, I think the West grouping is going to be significantly better in the coming years, despite the fact that Georgia is the elite program in the SEC right now. What do you think?
I think the West has been better. The East is basically what it's almost what the West was in the 90s at this point. And I've been very look, is the SEC the toughest conference? Yes. But SEC East fans need to shut up about this whole, we play in the SEC and we're so much tougher than the Big Ten. The SEC East, the Big Ten East is tougher than the SEC East by leaps and bounds. If a Big Ten East team plays a tougher schedule than an SEC East team every time over, okay, it's not even a debate. I'm sorry. Tennessee does not play as hard of a schedule as Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State this year. They don't. Neither does Georgia. And
no, I agree with that.
Yeah. And so what holds the Big Ten back is the Big Ten West, which is, of all these 4 divisions, the worst division of all. The Big Ten West should barely be Power 5. But right now, unless something changes, SEC East fans have no right to have pride about playing in the SEC, because you're playing as easy of a schedule as any team in the Big Ten at this point, as any team in the Big 12, and as any team in the Pac-12, quite honestly. You're playing a really weak schedule, and unless you're Tennessee, where you have to get Georgia and Alabama, which is the unfair draw, you kind of need to shut up because the East is really, really bad.
That's fair. It's almost like if you could put the Big Ten East and the SEC West together, you would have a super conference right there.
In, like, college football ever.
Yeah, and then if you could drag Georgia and Tennessee over there, you would have an electric, exciting conference with an elite program. Yeah, but the Big Ten West is just horrible.
The Big Ten West is what keeps the Big Ten second tier to the SEC.
Now, let me argue this. South Carolina has it going in the right direction based off how they ended the season last year, and the recruiting's going really well. Florida eventually, if Billy Napier's not the guy, has to get it right because of the in-state talent. Georgia's Georgia. Tennessee's trending the right way. Kentucky's totally above average. I don't think much of Missouri. I would argue that we could be having a very different conversation in 2 years, that the SEC East is solid, but I think that would take Shane Beamer to prove himself continually at South Carolina and Florida to ultimately have a new coach, because I don't think that Billy Napier is the answer there.
Okay, but if we play that game, let's go to the other side then. Okay, you're right. We agree Florida's fallen off. Even if they might have like a temporary, like one good year that teases everybody, but then they'll fall off. And I think you think the same will happen with South Carolina. But let's play the South Carolina game. Program on the rise. South Carolina's on the rise. They finished 8-5 last year. That's the same record that Maryland finished last year, which is in the Big Ten East. And so both teams 8-5. Many people think Maryland's on the rise with having won more games every year under Mike Locksley. Behind South Carolina, you got Florida maybe? Behind Maryland, you got Michigan State. Yeah, Michigan State had a fall off last year, but let's be honest, Dave. Right now, what's a better program, Michigan State or Florida? I might say Michigan State.
I can't. Under their current head coaches, it's Michigan State.
That's where I was getting it. Yeah.
Okay, but if I'm Coach Dave Hooker and I get offered either job, it's not even close. I'm taking Florida over Michigan State, right?
Oh, yeah. This isn't a question of which jobs are better. The SEC East has better jobs overall, but in terms of where the programs are right now, the Big Ten East programs are better. Even after Michigan State, Purdue had a losing record last year, but guess what, guys? Purdue did just beat Tennessee 2 seasons ago in the Music City Bowl. And by the way, that was a home game for Tennessee. It was in Nashville. And so and I think a lot of us believe in Jeff Brom, who is a pretty good coach. So, I'm sorry. I got that mixed up. Purdue's in the West, though. They're not in the East. Apologies. Indiana's in the Big Ten splits Purdue and Indiana between the East and the West, which is weird. But I guess long story short, that top 5 in the Big Ten East, Maryland, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Maryland, and Michigan State. You go top 1 to 5, the only parallel where the SEC East team is in better shape would be at the top. Georgia is better than any team in the Big Ten East. But I think Ohio State or Michigan interchangeable. Right now, both programs are ahead of Tennessee. We just can't deny that until Tennessee makes a playoff. And Tennessee's the second best team. So that's the issue.
Portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive, whether you're in Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Cleveland, Tennessee. For your industrial mowers, go to Vassy.com. Commercial mowers as well, residential. And with their buying powers, when you make that sort of investment, you will absolutely save money. Vassy.com, Vassy Lawn and Garden. What tier of a quarterback is Joe Milton? You give me 2 minutes and I'll tell you. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
To own the more that owns every job, then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's repair.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry, I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, here we go. Joe Milton III, Junior, Senior, Esquire, has been put in a box or on a tier, and Tennessee's quarterback is not really considered elite, but also considered pretty good. So, thoughts on the respect that Joe Milton III gets from a recent tier ranking by ESPN.com, and it will be 4 downs. But first of all, if you can set this up, he's a tier 3 quarterback. How is ESPN defining this before we get to 4 downs, Caleb Calhoun?
So tier 3 is not bad, but there's a tier 1A, a tier 1B, a tier 2, and a tier 3. And through those tiers, we're talking about maybe the top 16 to 20 quarterbacks. Tier 3 is quarterbacks who you may have questions about, but you have no questions about the system they're in. So you shouldn't question that they're probably going to be pretty good. And that's Joe Milton right now, which makes sense because we know about Josh Heupel's system. Just for the record, other quarterbacks in that system right now is Kate Klubnik for Clemson, Kyle McCord for Ohio State. Kind of agree with both of those because of Garrett Riley and Ryan Day in the spread that Ohio State runs. The ones I disagree with in this tier 3 are Alabama. I think they're just saying Alabama's system produces quarterbacks. No, they've just had great quarterbacks in the past few years. And the same with Georgia. They're saying Georgia with Carson Beck and Penn State with Drew Allar. I disagree with those 3.
All right, let's get rolling. 4 downs. It's brought to you by our friend Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, it's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Let's take a look at Joe Milton III, Esquire, 2nd, Junior, Senior. Cade Klubnik is one of the players that is in that same tier, that tier 3 at Clemson. So we saw him firsthand. Would you take Cade Klubnik over Milton in an even trade right now with Clemson? That'll be first down, brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Andy Mason has the best service and the best prices in Knoxville. If you're buying a home, it's Andy Mason. It's that simple. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Don't miss out on thousands with another realtor, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Reach out to him, tell him Off the Hook Sports sent you. So, first down, would you take Cade Klubnik over Joe Milton right now? What say you?
Did anybody watch what Cade Klubnik did to what we all agree was a very mediocre Tennessee pass defense last year? Wasn't good. No, I know we don't put too much stock in bowl games. I put stock in it if you play horribly, though, as a quarterback. And so, no, I'm taking Joe Milton over Cade Klubnik right now.
Okay, I don't take a lot of stock in bowl games, and I particularly don't take a lot of stock in this bowl game. But I would take Cade Klubnik for a couple of reasons. I think he's a more natural runner. Let me put 3 reasons. I think he's a more natural runner. I think that the way the game plan by Clemson was like they had zero faith in him. They're going for it on 4th downs. They're being overly aggressive. It's just like, play the game, man. Y'all have a talented roster. Just play the game. And then the third, I would say just eligibility. And eligibility would be the difference. He has 3 years where you would have 1.
Isn't that an overrated take nowadays, though, with the transfer portal? Like, is eligibility really a thing that matters anymore?
Travis says, there it is, ridiculous take. I'm not hating on Joe Milton, but if you had 3 years, okay, if you had to choose between 1 year of Joe Milton right now or 3 years of Nico, you would take 3 years of Nico. So I
would take 1 year of Nico because I think Nico's just that good over 1 year of Joe Milton.
You would take one. Okay.
1 year of Nico at where I think he's going to be, not Nico this year, but 1 year of Nico, like of where I think he's going to develop, Nico. So that's not even a fair comparison. But we always talk about I want the 3-year guy, not the 1 year guy. Well, guess what? Auburn got Cam Newton for 1 year. What happened? Syracuse had Carmelo Anthony for 1 year. What happened? Kentucky had Anthony Davis for 1 year. What happened?
Okay, but who is the high? There is a reason that Joe Milton, and I don't hate him. After what I heard in spring practice, he's going to be the starter the whole year. I'm not the Joe Milton hater anymore that you guys portray me as. But I will say this. There's a reason that he's just started 7 games in his career, and he's a senior, and he had to transfer, and then he got benched by Emmanuel Hooker. I know partly due to injury. There's a reason. So Cade Klubnik has this tremendous upside that we haven't really seen. Clemson's coaches really stumbled all over themselves in that game plan. It's not, don't tell me it's just out of left field for me to say, yes, I would take Cade Klubnik.
No, I think what's out of left field is when you say because it's 3 years versus 1, because what I don't believe in, and I say this with the NFL and I say it with college, the obsession with upside over proven derails so many teams. There's this whole, I think college football with the transfer portal is more win now than ever before. It is win right now because you have more resources to win right now than ever before. College football is almost college basketball now, Dave. A new head coach can turn a team around overnight, which used to not be the thing. And I think that it's the same way with, you didn't see the New York Jets say, well, we could have Zach Wilson for 20 years versus Aaron Rodgers for 2. No, they're like, we'll take Aaron Rodgers for 2 years. Okay. You didn't see John Elway go, I could have Tim Tebow for 15 years or Peyton Manning for 4. You take Peyton Manning for 4 years over Tim Tebow for 15. And so there's this win now thing. There's this upside idea that I think is just, it's been an annoying thing in sports for as long as I can remember, when your best success usually comes in a 5 or 6 year window. One, if you're talking about a coach or a pro player, and you only need 1 year for a college player.
Okay. Second down, who would you take over Joe Milton? And let's just talk 1 year. Let's take the eligibility thing out of it. I'm getting Dan and Mr. Jones and everybody that could possibly rip me. Rebecca's even ripping me, and I think she likes me. But everybody's ripping me. So who would you take? I think, we're objective. We're not just going to worship at the feet of Joe Milton because Josh Heupel says so. So what SEC quarterbacks would you take over Joe Milton for 1 year?
What, SEC quarterbacks, not overall quarterbacks?
Well, that's third down. Let's take it one down at a
Oh,
time.
okay. Sorry. I did not see third. I apologize. My apologies. SEC
That's fine
quarterbacks.
because, yeah, but I forgot to email you the rundown. Okay, go ahead.
I would probably take this year. Y'all are going to call me the LSU lover, but Jaden Daniels over Joe Milton, just because Jaden Daniels playing for Brian Kelly's offense. I have a lot of faith in him. I think he was underrated in this tiers. He's not even in the top 3 tiers. I railed against KJ Jefferson last year when people put him ahead of Hendon Hooker, and I said that was the stupidest thing. I'd probably take KJ Jefferson over Joe Milton, though.
Wow. So you're talking about a guy that's largely unproven, that had accuracy issues, and you've got him as the number 3 quarterback in the SEC.
The SEC has a lot of unproven quarterbacks this year. There's a lot of overturn. I mean,
that happens every year. I can remember, like every couple of years, it seems like there are 15 quarterbacks at SEC Media Days, and the next year that's going to be a down year in quarterbacks.
Yes.
And it happened this year. There was Hooker, Bryce Young, but I can't remember all.
Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, maybe.
Yeah. So it was like I was looking around thinking, well, next year's quarterback class is going to be very bad. Not saying those guys are bad, but okay. Third down, what quarterbacks in the nation are a lock that you would take over Joe Milton III? Now, I don't expect you to get every single one, but I would think it starts with Caleb Williams, right? At Southern California, it's hard to argue the Heisman Trophy winner wouldn't be an upgrade.
It's hard to argue Caleb Williams. I agree. I would take Caleb Williams. And then I would also take Drake May, who I think is going to be drafted behind Caleb Williams in 2024, but is a better draft prospect. Drake May is the best quarterback in this draft class. No questions asked.
I don't think he goes behind Caleb Williams.
You don't think he does?
Mm-mm. I think he's number 1. I've heard 2 words from a scout that got me perked up, and it was, the first word was John, the second word was Elway.
And that's the gold standard of number 1 draft picks, isn't he? Isn't John Elway like the gold standard of, like, even beyond Peyton Manning? There were just, because there were questions about Peyton. You knew John Elway was going to be a success in the NFL, right?
Yeah. I mean, just he had everything.
It was LeBron James when he was drafted number 1, I'm guessing.
Yes. Or Victor Wembanyama. The kid that the Spurs are going to get. Yeah, he was that type of freak athlete. And no knock against Peyton, but Peyton had the Ryan Leaf thing. So yeah, I think Drake May is that guy, and you would probably take him. I mean, I think Drake May's really, really special, like a generational talent. We'll see. I mean, he's got to survive another year at North Carolina. I got mad respect for the kid for sticking. I mean, I heard that there was like offers of $5 million for 1 year, which was pretty insane. So we're at 4th down. So 4th down, what is the most important game for Joe Milton III?
Florida. He's going to get by Virginia, and he's going to get by, who's their second game? I'm already forgetting it.
It's awful.
Yeah, somebody that they shouldn't be playing. Florida is the game where we judge Joe Milton, because we both think Florida's floundering, but that doesn't mean that they're a fall out of bed win for Tennessee. You're going to Florida. They haven't beaten Florida in the Swamp in 20 years. And, without Casey Clausen, they haven't beaten Florida in the Swamp since 1971. So that's by no means a given. They should beat Florida. But we've seen so many crazy things. But Florida's the game where you judge Joe Milton.
Yeah, Travis brings up a good point. So I'm all on board with Drake May, but he's the opposite of Tennessee's system. That is true. So kind of like trying to think of a good comparison. You would take we talked about how Nico was the perfect fit for Tennessee's system, whereas Arch Manning is a good fit for any system. So it's not a slight in Nico whatsoever, but I see what you're saying there, Travis. D, just absolutely no way keeping Milton. 2nd down, we are good this year. Milton has 3 years in the system. Anyone else would be green, fair. Rebecca says Florida sets the tone. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But by the same token, if anything happened in the Virginia game, I don't think it's going to be close. I haven't seen an early spread for that. But if you come out and there are errant passes, 6-7 errant passes, and you just beat Virginia by 3 touchdowns, instead of 4 or 5, or you just beat them by 2 touchdowns, that could be a defining game too that makes people scratch their head and wonder, because you're not going to learn anything from Austin Peay. So I'll say straight out of the chute, it's Virginia. Come out there and dominate and be really good. You've got the whole offseason to prepare. So I'll say that would set the tone of the season, which is an easy out for me to say the season opener sets the tone. But with a new quarterback, I think there's something to that. I think the players will see more out of Joe Milton being the guy throughout August and into the Virginia game than even we'll see, Caleb. And if they have half the belief in Milton they had in Hendon Hooker, Tennessee's good to go for the rest of the year. They will be a 10-win team.
Here's the thing. What you just said is going to happen versus Virginia, because that's going to be the offense this year. What people need to prepare for is you're going to have a lot more missed throws, some errant passes, and a lot more stalled drives. But you're going to see more. I hate the word ball control. Gosh, I hate the word ball control. But you're going to see a little bit more of it in Josh Heupel's system. You're going to see moving the ball more. And so you're still going to see Tennessee pretty much have control of games. But I don't think you're going to see consistent 60-point games this year. So I think what you just talked about is going to be the case, but I don't think it's going to be cause for panic, because I think the coaches are kind of prepared for that.
If they beat Virginia or any team by 20 and they're even close to time of possession and this is a different looking football team, hey man, I don't care if you cover or not. It used to really get on my nerves when Tennessee would beat like a Texas El Paso by 40 points, and some people are upset that they didn't cover the spread of 43. Listen, if you can go out there and punish some teams with this offensive line, and you might be able to do that, and a running game that's going to have some electricity that it didn't have with Dylan Sampson 100% in the playbook, hey, you're not going to hear me rip them for beating Virginia 30-10 and controlling the game throughout. So that's a fantastic point. I like that a lot. All right, so it is time for today's tough question. Today's tough question brought to you by Campbell Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Here we go.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Free LASIK promotion. No, I'm just kidding. But Campbell Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn did my LASIK surgery. No glasses near or far. I am golden. I can't even begin to tell you how awesome the care was, because I had another little bitty health issue that cropped up, and actually they diagnosed it. That had nothing to do with my eyes. Okay. And that's how awesome they are. Campbell Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, whether it's LASIK or cataract surgery, know that you have local doctors that care about you. And also their independent vision centers are fantastic for those annual checkups. So today's tough question: which ACC school would be the best natural rival for the Vols? I'm going to go first. I usually defer to you, Caleb, on these, but it ain't close. It's Clemson. That orange, that rivalry, that would be tremendous. It was super cool. It was really readily accepted and exciting by all standards, by both sides, both fan bases. It's Clemson, and I don't really think it's close. I'd be interested to see if you come up with somebody else and you can sway me at all.
You're wrong, and you're wrong, and you're wrong. Because when I say
Did I not even get like a soft thing? Basically, I just gotta.
You suck.
Thanks.
When you talk natural rivals, this has to be one that could maybe 20 years down the road turn into a series where each team circles the other game beyond any other. And Clemson, no matter what happens in football, will always circle South Carolina. They just will, because that's just that in-state rivalry. The same way Florida and Florida State will always circle each other. Georgia Tech, not so much. That rivalry's dead. But Clemson, South Carolina. Tennessee's most natural rival is Virginia Tech. And they were equidistant from Bristol.
I don't like you, Caleb, on your birthday.
Why don't you like me?
Changed my mind. I'm not the Stephen A. Smith that's going to continue to defend myself for Skip Bayless when I'm wrong. It's Tech.
It's Tech. It's the rivalry of the Appalachia. Okay.
It is. And if you go up to Bristol, I had to cover a lot of NASCAR races there. If you go up to Bristol, it's split like I imagine Auburn, Alabama would be. I mean, it is Virginia Tech and it is Tennessee. It's kind of a cool, neat little place. If you go to a NASCAR race up there and they're wearing any sort of football gear, it's either Tech or Tennessee. And it's pretty neat. I don't like you on your birthday, Caleb.
Yes, Tennessee and Virginia Tech, if they could ever get in the same conference, which I think if Virginia Tech got into the SEC, I think they would get to the level where they could actually be capable of being a powerhouse program then because they have resources. That could be a Michigan-Ohio State level of like border state rivalry with, by the way, for those who don't know, Toledo would be the Bristol because Toledo is equidistant from Ann Arbor and Columbus.
Okay.
And Bristol is equidistant from Blacksburg and Knoxville. It's Virginia Tech. That would be just the most. And what if you could play it in Bristol every year? What if you could just always do the battle in Bristol and always have the largest college football game ever witnessed? Uh-oh. I think we lost Dave. Guys, I'm going to carry the show for a second. I believe we lost Dave. I think I may have broken his screen by him changing his mind. But while he's, I'm sure, trying to figure this out, going through it, I see a lot of comments on Virginia Tech. D says Clemson number 2. Let's see. Mr. Jones says Duke. Fun fact, historically, Tennessee and Duke was a rivalry way back in the day. What else are we looking at? Let's see. Dave is just in deep thought. Yes, he is. Oh, I love this. Mr. Jones says Pitt and Syracuse. No. Neither one of those, Pitt nor Syracuse, is going to be a rivalry. Tennessee has one in Pitt, and they have one in Syracuse. They just won in Pitt last year. They won in Syracuse the year before. Pitt and Syracuse are rivals. For the record, Pittsburgh was the 50th place Tennessee ever won a game. And before that, it was Syracuse was the most recent, I think, random spot Tennessee won a game when they won at Syracuse back in 1998. Still waiting on Dave to get back. This is a great shot of Dave. While we're waiting on him, why don't you guys keep going forward? Go forward with a few of the other rivalries. Does anybody think, I want to talk to the message boards real quick. Does anybody think NC State would be a rival? Just a curious thought. Does anybody think NC State would be a rivalry? Nobody? I bring up NC State. Okay, Elias says UNC would have the most potential. Tennessee, UNC, again, a rivalry on either side of the Appalachia. That would be intriguing. They actually did used to play North Carolina every year during the era of the Southern Conference. But if North Carolina joins without another ACC team, that would be intriguing. Dave asked, am I back? Dave, you are not back. We cannot. You are still frozen. And so trying to figure out what's going on there. Mr. Jones says Syracuse versus Tennessee versus Clemson, all orange. Yes, but again, Syracuse is not joining the SEC. I'm telling you guys right now, Syracuse and Pitt, throw them out. They're not going to join the SEC, guys. Let's see. Mr. Jones brought up NC State. Mr. Jones says BC, Boston College, again, not joining the SEC. Fun fact, Boston College, one of Tennessee's national championship years during the golden age of the 30s and the 40s, 1940, beat Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl after Tennessee went undefeated in the regular season. Let's see. Travis says NC State is definitely an ACC team. Well, here's the problem with that. I think the SEC would prefer North Carolina. I do. But I think the Big Ten has more to offer North Carolina, at which point the SEC, still wanting to get into that market, would take NC State. So they would probably be the SEC team. And NC State does value football a little bit more than North Carolina. So they might be a better revenue boost. Mr. Jones says Wake Forest because they look like Vandy. Mr. Jones, if it wasn't for the fact that Vanderbilt was a charter member, I'm pretty sure the SEC would kick them out now. I'm going to tell you this. Wake Forest is going to be, Josh Pate said there are SOL teams when conference realignment happens. Wake Forest is going to be one of those teams, as will Boston College, which Riley Season mentioned Boston College. Wake Forest is done. There was a rumor that John Curry, former Tennessee athletic director, got into a bit of a screaming match with some people at the ACC recent meeting where we found out about the 7 schools. They ain't happy. They know they are in big trouble with the ACC collapsing. Travis says Miami or FSU could be, but it will be forced. It would be forced. If they both join the SEC, it'll be like an epic Miami, Florida State, Florida situation where the champion of Florida every year. It could be a rivalry in the sense of Tennessee and Florida State may be playing for, should we say that they may be playing for, there could be like a 90s period where the winner always plays for the championship or the national championship, but it's not going to be a natural rivalry from a border perspective. Elias says North Carolina talent is very underrated. You're right, Elias. Tennessee has actually built a lot of its success off North Carolina talent in the past. Hendon Hooker's from North Carolina. Leonard, I believe Leonard Little's from North Carolina. Sean Bryson's from North Carolina. Just a few teams. South Carolina scout guy, SC scout guy, says NC State and USC both have a really long history with South Carolina. Mr. Jones says Miami. Look, it's possible. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's highly possible that the SEC adds all the teams looking to leave the ACC just to corner the market in the Southeast because they don't want the Big Ten getting in there. That includes the North Carolina teams. That includes Virginia Tech. They would probably let Virginia go to the Big Ten because Virginia's not, for those who know the lay of the land of Virginia, Virginia's not, it's a half Southern state at this point. Charlottesville up is barely Southern. I mean, and I'm talking barely Southern. So to be fair so I think they would let Virginia Tech go, but I think they want Virginia in. That's true, actually. D says Heath Schuler's from North Carolina. I don't think the SEC wants the Big Ten in their North Carolina markets, to be fair. Elias says the state of North Carolina produces more NFL players than most SEC states. Are we sure about that? Is it most? Are we sure that they produce more than Florida? They don't more than Florida or Georgia. What about and they don't more than Louisiana. But Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, I don't know. I'm not sure. We got to look that up. Travis says, I just want to send Missouri to the West where they belong. Look, my dream with this 16-team conference would be Missouri move to the West, Alabama and Auburn to the East with Texas and Oklahoma join. That's not going to happen, though. I also want to point out that there's not going to be divisions and once they get to 16. And once they get to 20, it's probably going to be, it may be 4 divisions. The whole conference is going to be realigned. Mr. Jones, Maryland is in the Big Ten, not the ACC. They left the ACC. Fun story about that. Maryland left the ACC in 2011 to join the Big Ten. When that happened, that's why the ACC decided to sign that grant of rights deal that basically gave, I want to say, the grant of rights deal and the $120 million exit fee. They did that in 2016 in a 20-year deal, thinking this would keep the schools locked in. Stupidest deal ever. That was a reaction to Maryland and the $50 million exit fee in 2011. Don't know why they did that. SC Scout guy says there is zero chance of Clemson and he thinks there's zero chance of Clemson FSU joining the SEC. South Carolina and Florida really do have a pact to not let each other in. Ray Tanner, AD, all but came out and said so. SC Scout guy, that may be true, but okay, if those two vote against it, what about the rest of the league? Texas A&M couldn't stop Texas from getting in. I'm sorry, Clemson and South Carolina and Florida State are joining the SEC. They're big brands, and the SEC has made pretty clear at this point with adding Texas when they already had Texas A&M. They're not worried about markets anymore. Mr. Jones brought up Notre Dame. There is debate that Notre Dame might be an intriguing option. The SEC, Greg Sankey, has been very serious about staying regional. Notre Dame kind of violates that, but Indiana does border Kentucky, so it's possible. Travis says money talks. That's true. Elias says they'd be right in the middle more than Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky. They're right there with South Carolina and Alabama. Okay. All right. I could see that. Yeah. So Tennessee, they probably do have more than Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, and Kentucky. I could get with you on that. But think about this, Elias, where the SEC states are. There are, so at Louisiana and Texas. And so let's go Texas. We're talking for the record whether or not North Carolina has more in-state talent than half the SEC states. Louisiana, Texas, Georgia, and Florida are clear-cut have more talent than North Carolina. Nobody's going to debate that. I just named Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, Georgia, Florida, 5 SEC schools already. And then we're talking Alabama, that's right at 7. Again, I got to debate you on Mississippi. I'm not totally sure. Pro Football Reference would have the states where they came from, but I can't be totally sure on that. So we kind of have to figure that out. So I'm not sure. Mr. Jones brings up West Virginia. Yes, West Virginia actually would be an intriguing SEC program. For those who don't know the history of West Virginia, the reason it's been so hard for them to get into a major conference in the past has been travel issues. It's hard to get to Morgantown. It ain't easy. Now that's changed over the years, but it's still a little bit tricky. West Virginia thumbs their nose at academics, but honestly, I think a lot of schools do now. So who cares? West Virginia thumbs their nose at academics. SC Scout Guy says, I just hope none of this actually happens. The SEC was fine at 12 and okay at 14, but I don't think I can handle more than 16. SC Scout Guy, sorry, this is where it's going. I don't like it any more than you do. Okay. If I had my way, if I were the king of college football, I would go back to 10-team conferences everywhere. The original 10 of the SEC after Georgia Tech and Tulane left, the original 10 of the Big Ten, form some Northeastern Conference, have the original 10, have the ACC with Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Georgia Tech, the 4 North Carolina schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech. That's how I would do it. But I don't think that's going to happen. No. So Mr. Jones brings up Georgia Tech as a potential Tennessee rivalry. That was a great rivalry back in the day. I don't think that it's any. Here's the kicker with Georgia Tech. There is no way Georgia Tech joins the SEC unless the Big Ten is targeting them. But the Big Ten, the Big Ten wouldn't target Georgia Tech because of the revenue they bring. Here's why the Big Ten would target Georgia Tech. Say they get Miami. Say they get UNC. Say they get Virginia. Those would be the 3 schools of the ACC that of the ACC 7 that are breaking off. Those are the only 3 schools the Big Ten can take because they have to be AAU member institutions. That gets them into new markets. So they're all great, valuable schools. They all generate revenue. To make the states congruent, then they can add Georgia Tech because then you're congruent from Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. They all border each other. You're in the Miami market. You're in every market in the South at that point. On top of that, Georgia Tech does qualify academically. If the Big Ten starts going to add targeting Georgia Tech, then you could see the SEC try to add Georgia Tech because I'm telling you right now, the SEC does not want the Big Ten in their markets. That's a dangerous proposition in this arms race that's happening between the conferences right now. Elias brings up the point, Mississippi kills everyone else per capita, but it's less populous in Arkansas, talking about in-state football talent. Fair enough. That's a good point. Travis says, problem is teams in weak conferences keep jumping over great teams in great conferences. I assume you're talking about the playoff. I don't think that's going to be a problem when these conferences get so big. I think it's with a 12-team playoff in these conferences as big as they are, you're largely going to have the 12 best teams. And you can't look when you get to the Big Ten with 28 teams and the SEC with 24 teams or something like that, there's no way you could theoretically have a top 10. There's no way you could theoretically have the top 6 conference champions go to the playoffs. That's just ridiculous. You're going to have to change that. Travis says you have a team like UCF claiming titles because they beat Auburn. Well, here's the funny thing. Mentioning UCF, you bring that up. Guys, the reason this ACC thing is happening is because, one, Florida State can't exist in the same stratosphere as Florida when Florida State and Miami are each bringing in $17 million from ACC TV payouts and the SEC is about to bring in $60 million to Florida. That's not sustainable. UCF's going to get a bigger payout too now that they've joined the Big 12, which has a better TV deal than the ACC, which means Florida State and Miami could fall to 3rd and 4th in the state of Florida behind UCF. They know that. That's why they're trying to get out. The same with Clemson, which is that Clemson and South Carolina, they can't exist in the same stratosphere if Clemson's bringing in $17 million in revenue and South Carolina is bringing in, I want to say, sorry, excuse me, guys. And South Carolina is bringing in upwards of $60 million. Guys, sorry. Dave is texting me right now, and he says nothing he can do. It's a restream issue, not an internet issue. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We tried to wrap this up. We were going to talk about Ja Morant in the next segment. We'll talk about him tomorrow. Thank you guys all so much for commenting. We, again, apologize for the technical difficulties. We'll try to get this worked out the next day. But yes, keep that in mind. Comment on our YouTube page. We'll have these up today. Hit the like and subscribe button. We will talk about the best. We will talk about Ja Morant tomorrow and some more Tennessee football news, college football news in general. And okay, I'm seeing some random things. I want to go through the comments real quick before we get out of here. Elias says, watch us end up with a 14 playoff. If you talk about the SEC, yes, that's probably going to happen. My guess is the SEC and the Big Ten form an ALNL, and that's how that goes. Elias says, streaming is an adventure. Good luck. That's true. Mr. Jones says, Bryce Young makes Kyler Murray look like a giant. Yeah, that was a little weird picture. I saw that too. Someone said he looks like that Make-A-Wish kid that's invited to NFL Sundays. Thank you guys again for all joining. Apologize for the technical difficulties. We will be back tomorrow, but please, again, comment, like, subscribe, and talk about what rivalries you would like to see for Tennessee football. I am Caleb Calhoun. Thanks to Dave Hooker for streaming the show. You guys all have a great rest of your day.